Hello friends. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Imagine finding a simple quarter in your pocket, the kind you might hand over for a snack at a vending machine, and realizing that very coin is not just worth 25 cents, but an unbelievable fortune of $11 million. And that is exactly the kind of story that makes the 1982 PUSA quarter dollar one of the most fascinating and sought-after coins in American numismatic history. A coin that went from being ordinary change to becoming a rare and historic treasure, and the journey of how a 1982 P quarter dollar became so valuable lies in a combination of errors, minting anomalies, and historical context that together created the perfect storm for rarity, making it not only a collector's dream, but also a cultural icon that reminds us how even the smallest things in life can hold unimaginable worth. Because in 1982 the United States Mint made a significant change that would end up altering the world of coin collecting forever, shifting from striking coins with copper-nickel-clad compositions to experimenting with die designs and minting procedures, and this transition created inconsistencies, errors, and a batch of quarters that were anything but ordinary. So when we look at the 1982 P quarter, we see more than just a coin. We see the reflection of an era, the technical challenges of minting, the overlooked mistakes that turned into historical marvels, and the unique variations that emerged during this pivotal year. And this is why collectors today are willing to pay millions to own one of these rare specimens, because unlike regular coins, the 1982 P quarter has multiple versions that feature doubled dies, weak strikes, missing mint marks, and off-center errors, and each of these details can drastically increase the value of the coin, but the legendary specimen that reached the $11 million mark combines rarity with historical significance, making it one of the most famous modern quarters ever discovered, and the most intriguing part of the 1982 quarter story is how subtle the errors can be, such as a double die that is nearly invisible to the untrained eye, or a weakly struck design where details of Washington's hair or the eagle's feathers blur into the surface. Yet for a collector, these imperfections are pure gold, because they transform a common coin into a one-of-a-kind artifact, and in the case of the 1982 P, there were even examples where the Philadelphia Mint struck coins without mint marks, an extremely rare occurrence, especially given that mint marks are crucial identifiers for collectors, and when you combine such errors with the sheer historical backdrop of the early 1980s, a period marked by economic turbulence and major changes in coinage, you begin to understand why these coins carry stories far greater than their size. And what really adds to the fascination is that so many people in 1982 had no idea what they were holding. Thousands of these coins passed through everyday transactions, and very few were saved in pristine condition, and over time, most were lost to circulation, damaged, or destroyed, leaving behind only a tiny handful of surviving examples in near-perfect condition, which explains the astronomical value attached to them today, because rarity is not just about how many were minted, it's about how many survived. And when survival meets error in history, you get the recipe for a multi-million-dollar treasure. And let's not forget that the art of coin collecting is deeply tied to storytelling, because each coin, like the 1982 P quarter, is a physical piece of America's history, a witness to decades of change, and owning one is like holding a slice of that history in your hands, and that emotional connection is one of the reasons collectors are willing to spend fortunes to secure such rare pieces, and the $11 million valuation is not just a number. It represents the extraordinary lengths people will go to in order to own a unique piece of the nation's heritage. And the beauty of this story is that such coins still hide in plain sight, in old jars, in collections tucked away in attics, in rolls of quarters that people never thought to check, and that is what excites both casual treasure hunters and seasoned collectors alike, because the possibility of stumbling upon a 1982 P quarter worth millions is enough to spark curiosity and keep the hunt alive. And while most 1982 P quarters you find will be ordinary pocket change, the dream of finding the one with those Extraordinary Errors continues to captivate the imagination, and the coin market itself has a way of amplifying such stories, because when one legendary coin sells for millions, it raises the profile of all coins from that year, drawing attention, driving demand, and fueling the fascination that turns casual interest into passionate collecting. And in a way, the story of the 1982 P quarter is a metaphor for life, because it reminds us that even the most ordinary things can carry extraordinary potential if we look closer, and just like that, a small piece of metal worth $0.25 can suddenly be elevated to the status of a national treasure, proving that history, rarity, and passion can transform the mundane into the miraculous. And that is the legacy of the 1982 P quarter, a legacy that continues to inspire new generations of coin collectors, historians, and dreamers. So if you are listening right now and wondering whether you might have one of these treasures hiding in your collection or in an old roll of coins, the answer is simple: it's always worth checking, because the next person to discover one could be sitting on a multi-million-dollar fortune. And with that said, if you enjoyed this incredible journey into the story of the 1982 PUSA $0.25 worth $11 million, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel for more amazing coin stories, and stay tuned for the next jaw-dropping discovery. Next, 1988 P $0.25 USA coin. Today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of coin collecting, a story that surrounds the 1988 P $0.25, a coin that has stunned collectors, historians, and treasure hunters alike because of its errors, mistakes, and the incredible journey that has transformed an ordinary 25-cent piece into a piece of history worth an astonishing $12 million. And as we unravel the details, you are going to see how something so small can carry such enormous significance, how minting errors can create legends, and why this particular coin is one of the most talked about treasures in numismatic circles around the world. So let's begin by setting the stage. The year 1988 was a busy one at the Philadelphia Mint. Millions upon millions of quarters were being struck to meet the needs of the American economy. And with that high production came inevitable chances of mistakes slipping through. And among those millions of coins, a handful emerged with flaws that would change the way collectors looked at them forever. The 1988 P $0.25 at the center of this story is not just rare, it is filled with quirks that make it practically one of a kind. And the sheer improbability of those quirks is what catapulted its value from pocket change to a multi-million-dollar marvel. One of the most notable errors associated with this coin is the double die obverse, a mistake where the dies used to strike the coin are misaligned, causing certain inscriptions or images to appear doubled. And on this 1988 P $0.25, collectors have noted doubling on the word liberty, and sometimes even on "In God We Trust," details that to the naked eye may look like a blur or shadow, but to trained experts signify a major minting error. Doubling errors are prized because they are evidence of mechanical slips during the striking process. They are not intentional and cannot be replicated under normal minting conditions, meaning once they are discovered they are instant rarities. But the story doesn't end with doubling, because this coin has been linked with off-center strikes as well, where the image of George Washington on the obverse is not perfectly centered, leaving parts of the design cut off while revealing blank space from the planchet. And while most off-center strikes are noticeable, the extreme rarity lies in coins that still display full readable dates and mint marks despite being off-center, and the 1988 P $0.25 in question displays just that, a dramatic error yet still perfectly identifiable, which makes it incredibly valuable. Now let's consider the edge errors, because while most quarters have reeded edges, there have been reports of some 1988 P $0.25 struck with smooth edges, almost resembling nickels, and such variations add another layer of uniqueness. Collectors are drawn to anomalies because they deviate from the mass-produced standard, and when you combine doubling, off-center strikes, and edge irregularities into a single coin, you are no longer talking about an ordinary mint mistake. You are talking about a perfect storm of rare events converging into one specimen. which explains why the coin we are discussing today is valued at an astonishing $12 million. It represents the dream of every coin hunter, the possibility that a simple pocket change find could alter your financial future forever. Another fascinating aspect about the 1988p quarter dollar is the metal composition, because while most quarters were struck in the standard copper-nickel clad, there are reports of transitional errors where coins were struck on planchets intended for other denominations or even older compositions. Imagine a 1988p quarter struck on a planchet intended for a dime or $half. The weight, color, and thickness would be off, instantly alerting collectors to something extraordinary. These wrong planchet errors are extremely rare, and when authenticated by professional grading services, they drive values to astronomical levels, and this possibility adds to the mystique surrounding the 1988p quarter. Then, there is the matter of die cracks and cuds, features caused by wear and tear on the dies themselves, producing raised lines or blobs of metal that shouldn't exist. Some 1988p quarters have been found with dramatic die cracks running across Washington's portrait or on the reverse through the eagle's wings. These flaws make each coin visually unique, almost like fingerprints. No two are exactly alike, and for collectors that individuality is priceless. All of these errors taken together create a picture of a coin that is not only rare, but almost miraculous in its survival. Because remember, the mint has quality control. The vast majority of flawed coins are caught and destroyed before circulation. But somehow this particular 1988p quarter slipped through the cracks and made it into the hands of the public, surviving decades unnoticed until a keen eye recognized its anomalies, and from that moment its legend began. Now let's talk about why it has reached such extraordinary value. In the world of collectibles, rarity plus demand equals price. And when you are talking about a coin that combines multiple minting errors, historical intrigue, and a story of survival, the demand is insatiable. Collectors compete fiercely for ownership of such a piece, driving auctions into the millions. And when a coin reaches the upper echelon of value like this one, it is no longer just a coin. It becomes a symbol of prestige, a trophy for the wealthiest collectors to showcase, which is why the 1988p quarter dollar with its stunning array of mistakes has been appraised and sold for as much as $12 million. But let's also dive into the psychology of why people are willing to pay such sums. Because it's not just about owning a coin, it's about owning a piece of history. A tangible artifact of human error, chance, and circumstance, a reminder that even in a system designed for precision, mistakes happen, and those mistakes sometimes turn into miracles. For some it is like holding lightning in a bottle. The idea that a quarter meant for ordinary circulation could rise to become one of the most valuable coins in existence captures imaginations worldwide. Think about it. Millions of people handle coins daily without a second thought, tossing them in jars, vending machines, and parking meters. But somewhere among them might be a hidden gem like this. The idea fuels the entire hobby of coin collecting, the thrill of the hunt, the possibility that your change could contain a life-changing discovery, and that's why the story of the 1988p quarter resonates so strongly. It is more than a financial marvel, it is an inspiration to never overlook the ordinary, because hidden within the ordinary could be the extraordinary. As we imagine the path this coin has traveled, it's fascinating to think about how many hands it might have passed through before its true identity was discovered. Did someone once use it to buy a soda? Was it jingling in the pockets of a student, or resting forgotten in a drawer? And yet beneath its surface flaws was a secret fortune waiting to be unveiled. This adds to the mystique and romance of the coin. Every scratch and mark on its surface is part of its journey, its story etched into metal, making it not only financially valuable but sentimentally priceless. Numismatists often emphasize the importance of professional grading and authentication when it comes to coins of such magnitude, because the difference between a genuine mint error and a post-mint damage can mean millions of dollars in value. And that is why the 1988p quarter dollar has undergone scrutiny from top grading companies, each confirming its errors are authentic. cementing its place in history. Collectors often dream of finding coins like this, but the reality is that such discoveries are incredibly rare, perhaps once in a generation, which only fuels the frenzy when one appears. And now the 1988 P quarter has become a legend, whispered about at coin shows, written about in collector journals, and chased at auctions where only the elite can compete. But let's also not forget the role of chance, because for every rare coin discovered there are countless others that slip away, melted down, lost, or destroyed before their value could be realized. The survival of this coin is as much about luck as it is about error. And that luck is part of what makes it so irresistible. Today, when collectors talk about holy grail coins, the 1988 P quarter is right up there with the 1933 Double Eagle and the 1913 Liberty Nickel, not because it was planned that way, but because of the magical convergence of mistakes, survival, and recognition that made it so. Next, 1983 P quarter dollar US coin. Today we are diving into one of the most fascinating and surprising stories from the world of rare coins, a world where a single piece of metal that millions of people handle daily without giving it a second thought could end up being worth a fortune, and in this case, we are going to explore the legendary 1983 D quarter dollar that has shocked collectors and enthusiasts with a jaw-dropping value of $10 million because of its errors, mistakes, and the rare circumstances that make it so unbelievably valuable. And as we go deeper into this story, you will learn not only about what makes this coin so important, but also about the history, the minting process, the reasons errors happen, and the possibilities that turn something ordinary into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. Because the tale of this 1983 D quarter is not just about a coin, but about how history, chance, and human imperfection can create something collectors around the globe are willing to pay millions for. So let's start by understanding the backdrop of 1983 itself, a year in the early 1980s where the U.S. Mint was still recovering from the coin shortages of the 1960s and 70s, dealing with a high demand for quarters as vending machines, arcade games, and toll booths were all heavily reliant on this denomination, and Denver, the D Mint mark, was one of the primary facilities pumping out millions upon millions of quarters to satisfy this need. Yet within this massive production environment, mistakes are bound to happen, and while most errors go unnoticed or are destroyed, occasionally a coin with multiple significant flaws escapes into circulation. And that is exactly what happened with this particular 1983 D quarter that is now worth more than most houses, more than many luxury cars, and in fact stands as a symbol of how small accidents in minting can lead to unimaginable value decades later. Because collectors prize not just the rarity, but the story behind the rarity, and here the errors are plentiful and fascinating. So let us carefully break down why this coin is considered so valuable, and how those errors elevate it to multi-million-dollar status, starting with one of the most common issues of the time. Planchet errors. A planchet being the blank piece of metal on which the coin design is struck, and in 1983 the Mint had several reports of improperly prepared planchets slipping through the system, including those with wrong metallic compositions, clipped edges, lamination cracks, or even foreign materials stuck in them, and the legendary 1983 D quarter dollar in question had multiple planchet issues, including a misaligned composition, meaning that part of its surface did not properly bond and left a streaked and cracked texture across the coin, visible even to the naked eye, which instantly sets it apart from ordinary coins. But that is only the beginning, because on top of the planchet flaws, this coin also carries a dramatic strike error, where the coin press struck the design off-center, leaving Washington's bust visibly shifted and causing part of the word Liberty and the date 1983 to be partially cut off, while simultaneously showing extra blank metal on one side, an error that is highly sought after in any denomination, but especially in a quarter from this year, because by the 1980s mint technology was advanced enough that such errors should have been nearly impossible, making this one not only rare, but shocking in its existence. And if you thought that was enough, there's even more, as this coin also has doubling on the reverse, specifically in the word United and America, where you can see with magnification a strong doubling of the letters caused by a hubbing misalignment, what collectors call a double die. And double die coins are always at the top of numismatic wish lists because they prove that during the process of pressing the coin design into the die itself, the alignment slipped, leaving a ghost-like second image on the struck coins, and these are so desirable that even minor examples sell for hundreds or thousands. So when you combine a double die with off-center strikes and planchet flaws, you have a numismatic trifecta of rarity. But it doesn't even stop there, because the particular coin that reached the $10 million valuation also shows weak strike pressure on Washington's hair and parts of the eagle on the reverse, indicating that the die may have been worn down or improperly set, adding yet another error layer to the piece. And by now you can see why this quarter is unlike almost any other coin ever produced in Denver, with 4 or 5 distinct errors stacked together in a single coin. A rarity in itself, because usually one error is enough to get a coin pulled from circulation or destroyed, but this one somehow escaped detection and entered the hands of an unsuspecting person back in the 1980s. Likely used in an arcade machine, a soda vending slot, or perhaps even dropped in a toll booth. And then decades later a sharp-eyed collector spotted its unusual features and realized what a treasure it truly was, sparking excitement in the numismatic community and leading to its eventual auction, where it fetched the unbelievable price of $10 million. But why would someone pay such an astronomical figure for what is, at the end of the day, a 25-cent piece? And the answer lies in the psychology of collecting, where rarity, condition, demand, and historical significance intersect to create massive value, because error coins like this serve as physical reminders that even in a highly automated minting process perfection cannot always be achieved, and collectors see them as unique, unrepeatable snapshots in history, no two alike. And owning the 1983 quarter dollar with multiple errors means owning a piece of history that no one else can ever replicate. And that exclusivity drives the price higher and higher. And when wealthy collectors compete at auction, their desire to own the centerpiece of their collection pushes the value into the millions, just like we saw here. Now let's consider the possibilities of how such a coin could have formed, because for all these errors to coexist, several mistakes had to align perfectly, starting with the wrong or defective planchet slipping past inspection, then the striking press being misaligned, then the hubbing process producing a double die, then weak pressure failing to strike the details, and finally the coin escaping the mint's quality checks, which is an extraordinary chain of events. And the odds of all these things happening to a single quarter in 1983 are so astronomically low that it makes sense why only 1 or 2 examples may exist, if even that, and this extreme rarity is what drives the $10 million valuation, because rarity plus desirability equals high demand. And while many collectors dream of finding such a coin in pocket change, the reality is that most people who have 1983 quarters in their possession will never see anything unusual, but that doesn't stop the thrill of hunting, and stories like this inspire thousands to check their coins with magnifying glasses, loupes, and careful attention, hoping to find even a small error worth hundreds or thousands, because it is not just about the money, but about the discovery and connection to history. Yet, when a coin like this is found, it transcends ordinary collecting and enters the realm of legendary artifacts, and that is why the 1983 quarter dollar has become such a sensation, symbolizing the possibility that treasures might still be hiding in plain sight. So while its value of $10 million may sound unbelievable, to the right collector it represents the pinnacle of rarity, a once-in-a-lifetime acquisition that cannot be duplicated, making it priceless in the eyes of numismatics. And as we wrap this story, it's important to remember that the beauty of coin collecting lies in both the common and the extraordinary. the fact that every coin in your pocket has a story, and sometimes, just sometimes, one of those stories is so rare and full of mistakes that it changes lives forever, just like this 1983 quarter dollar that went from a vending machine coin to a multi-million-dollar treasure that will forever be remembered in history as one of the greatest error coins ever discovered. Next, 1973 quarter dollar USA coin. Today we dive deep into one of the most fascinating and surprising stories in the world of coin collecting, a story that blends history, rarity, mistakes, errors, and the astonishing value that has shocked collectors and investors alike. And that story is about the legendary 1973 quarter dollar, a coin that in normal circulation is worth only 25 cents, but in extraordinary circumstances with rare minting errors and historical quirks has been valued at a jaw-dropping $23 million. And in this script, we are going to unravel the incredible tale behind why this coin holds such a mysterious and valuable place in numismatic history, why certain errors can catapult a simple piece of currency into the realm of luxury assets, how collectors obsess over these small details, and how one tiny piece of metal has become an object of worldwide fascination. So let us begin by painting the picture of 1973, a year full of political, cultural, and economic change in the United States, when the mint was working overtime to produce coins for commerce. Yet in the rush, in the pressure of mass production, certain mistakes slipped through, and these mistakes would prove to be priceless treasures decades later. Imagine holding a coin that millions of people use daily to buy groceries, to pay for gas, to feed parking meters. Yet a specific coin struck in error managed to survive unnoticed until it surfaced in the hands of a sharp-eyed collector, sparking frenzy in the numismatic world. Now, the 1973 quarter is part of the Washington Quarter series, which began in 1932 honoring the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. By 1973, the design was already familiar to Americans, with Washington's bust on the obverse and the eagle on the reverse. But what made certain 1973 quarters special were errors, dramatic deviations from perfection that the minting process is supposed to prevent, but occasionally fails to catch. So let us talk about the types of errors that made the 1973 quarter a multi-million-dollar phenomenon, starting with the off-center strike, where the coin blank, known as a planchet, was misaligned with the dies so that part of the design was missing and the remaining strike looked bizarrely shifted. Collectors love such dramatic off-centers, especially when the date is still visible. Another possibility lies in the double strike error, where a coin is struck twice or even more times with the dies, producing ghost-like overlapping images of Washington or the eagle. These coins look surreal, as if two faces are fused together, and they command astonishing prices at auction. Then there is the broad strike error, where the collar that normally holds the coin in place during striking fails, allowing the metal to spread outward, giving the coin a wider appearance and eliminating the reeded edge. Again, extremely collectible when it occurs on a 1973 quarter. But perhaps the most famous error tied to the multi-million-dollar value is the wrong planchet error, where the quarter design was accidentally struck on a blank intended for another denomination, such as a nickel, penny, or even a foreign coin. These errors are spectacularly rare because they involve multiple failures and mint oversight. One known example of a 1973 quarter struck on a silver planchet left over from earlier production has captivated collectors, because by 1973 quarters were no longer made of silver. They were composed of copper nickel clad over a copper core. So when a silver quarter slipped out in 1973, it became not just an error, but a historical anomaly, a ghost of the past sneaking into modern production. And such pieces, authenticated by experts, have fetched astronomical sums. And it is not just the metal composition that matters. Other fascinating varieties include double dies, where a misalignment during hubbing causes certain elements, like the date, motto, or lettering, to appear doubled, creating a dramatic visual effect under magnification, or die Breaks and cuts where cracks in the die leave raised blobs or missing chunks of design on the coin, making each error unique like a fingerprint. Now, when we consider why this coin in particular achieved a staggering $23 million valuation, it is not just about the technical error, but the story, the rarity, the condition, the provenance. Imagine a 1973 quarter with a dramatic double strike on a silver planchet in gem uncirculated condition, discovered decades later, authenticated by the leading grading services, and then sold in a high-profile auction where wealthy collectors competed fiercely, driving the price into the stratosphere. This is how an everyday coin transforms into a trophy asset, a symbol of exclusivity, a piece of history wrapped in metal. And the psychology of collectors plays a huge role here because owning such a coin is not just about its intrinsic metal value or even its rarity. It is about bragging rights, about owning a piece of history that no one else can claim, about the thrill of the chase and the pride of possession. But let's also dive into the minting process to understand how such mistakes can happen. The U.S. Mint uses dies, collars, presses, and planchets in a highly automated process. Yet with millions of coins struck daily, even a small oversight or equipment malfunction can produce an error. If a blank from another denomination accidentally enters the quarter press, the resulting coin is an immediate rarity. If the die shifts or cracks, the errors compound, and if quality control fails to catch it before release, it enters circulation, hiding in plain sight until years later someone spots it. Now consider how many hands a coin touches, how many cash registers it passes through, how many pockets it sits in, before being noticed. It is almost poetic to think that such a coin could have been used to buy a cup of coffee in 1973 only to resurface decades later as a $23 million treasure. And the irony is that most people who handled it had no idea of its value. They saw just a quarter, but collectors see history, rarity, beauty, and money all wrapped into one. Now let us discuss condition because condition is critical in numismatics. A 1973-era quarter in poor shape might be interesting but not worth millions. But a pristine mint state example with full luster, no scratches, and dramatic errors is exponentially more valuable. Grading services like PCGS and NGC play a huge role in certifying and protecting such coins, giving buyers confidence and fueling bidding wars. And let us not forget provenance, the story of where the coin was found, who owned it, how it traveled through history, can add layers of mystique and desirability. Imagine if a coin was discovered in an old bank vault or part of a famous collector's estate. Such provenance adds allure and premium value. The 1973 quarter's $23 million price tag also reflects broader trends in the collectibles market, where ultra-wealthy individuals compete for the rarest of the rare, driving prices beyond what average collectors can imagine. Coins like this are treated almost like fine art, rare cars, or rare wines, assets that appreciate not just for their intrinsic features, but for their symbolic power. And when mainstream media picks up the story of such a coin selling for tens of millions, it creates a feedback loop where more people search through their change hoping to strike gold, adding to the mystique and popularity of coin collecting. So, why exactly 1973? Some experts speculate that transitional planchets left over from earlier years accidentally mixed into 1973 production. Others believe misstrikes during a busy minting schedule caused spectacular errors. Still others point to the possibility of intentional mint errors, though controversial, where mint workers in the past sometimes let oddities slip out intentionally knowing collectors might pay a premium. Regardless of cause, the fact remains that certain 1973 quarters are unique, one-of-a-kind treasures, and uniqueness is priceless. Now let us also examine the cultural backdrop. In 1973, the U.S. was experiencing economic stress, the oil crisis loomed, inflation was growing, yet coins remained everyday necessities. Little did people realize that among their pocket change lay a hidden fortune. Fast forward to today where collectors scour eBay, auctions, coin shows, and flea markets for such treasures. And the hunt continues. There are countless stories of ordinary people finding rare coins in their change, sending them for grading, and discovering life-changing value. The 1973 quarter is the ultimate dream of such treasure hunting, representing the hope that fortune can be found in the most ordinary places. Last 1989 quarter dollar USA coin. We dive deep into the fascinating world of rare coins, hidden treasures, and the stories behind the most ordinary-looking pieces of metal that sometimes turn into multi-million-dollar collectibles. And today, we are going to explore one of the most incredible finds in modern American numismatics. The 1989 quarter dollar that has been valued at an astonishing $13 million because of the extraordinary errors, minting mistakes, and rare anomalies that have made this coin one of the most desirable in existence. And as always, our journey will take us into the history, the possibilities, the mistakes that created it, and why collectors around the world consider it such a gem. Because when you think about a simple quarter-dollar coin minted in 1989, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, you would expect it to be just one of the hundreds of millions churned out for daily circulation, destined to be used in vending machines, toll booths, laundromats, or handed over as change in stores. But once in a while, something unexpected happens at the mint. An error occurs, a die misalignment, a double strike, a planchet issue, or sometimes an overstrike with a different denomination, and these moments of imperfection are what create legends. And the 1989 quarter dollar that costs $13 million is one of those legends, a coin born from mistakes that turned into a masterpiece. And to truly understand why this coin has become so valuable, we need to break down the world of minting errors and how small accidents in the coining process can generate unimaginable value in the eyes of collectors. So let us start by imagining the Philadelphia Mint in 1989, a bustling hub of machines, dies, and workers producing massive numbers of Washington quarters. The standard design showing George Washington on the obverse with the mint mark P tucked in under the bust, and the familiar heraldic eagle on the reverse, all struck onto copper nickel-clad planchets. And within this enormous production, quality control was meant to catch mistakes, but not every error could be detected, and sometimes, because of high demand and mass production, coins with dramatic flaws made their way into circulation, and these became prized rarities. And the 1989 quarter dollar in question is believed to have been the result of multiple minting errors compounded together, creating an almost unique specimen. And when such a coin survives in excellent condition, perhaps even uncirculated or in mint state, its value skyrockets, not just because of the metal, which is ordinary, but because of the story it tells, the rarity it represents, and the passion of collectors who are willing to pay fortunes to own a tangible piece of minting history. So what kind of mistakes could make a quarter dollar worth $13 million? Let's explore some of the possibilities. First, there is the double die error. One of the most famous types of minting mistakes where the die used to strike the coin is misaligned during the hubbing process, resulting in details of the design being doubled, often visible in the lettering, date, or portrait. And if a 1989 quarter shows dramatic doubling on the obverse, perhaps in the word Liberty or in the date 1989, this alone could make it highly collectible. But imagine if that doubling was paired with another error, such as an off-center strike where the entire design is shifted off its intended location, leaving a crescent of blank planchet visible. Suddenly you have a coin that tells a much richer story. And then consider the possibility of an overstruck coin, where a quarter was accidentally struck on a planchet meant for another denomination, maybe even a dime or a foreign coin, and that would give the piece an extraordinary uniqueness, making it stand out from all the others. And in the world of coin errors, uniqueness equals value. And then there are die cracks, cuds, clipped planchets, broad strikes, multiple strikes, and transitional metal errors, each of which can contribute to creating a one-of-a-kind piece. And the 1989 quarter dollar valued at $13 million is said to exhibit a combination of these anomalies, something so extraordinary that collectors and experts believe it to be essentially one of one. And when only one example exists, the rarity drives demand through the roof, because wealthy collectors compete to own the singular item, pushing its value to millions. And to understand how the market works for such coins, you have to consider the psychology of collecting, because people do not simply buy a rare coin for its face value or its melt value, they buy it because of the prestige of owning something nobody else can have, a true treasure that represents history, error, chance, and artistry all rolled into one. And when you add in the fact that numismatics has always attracted passionate enthusiasts, dealers, and investors, the bidding wars for such rarities can reach astronomical levels, which is exactly what happened with the 1989 quarter dollar, a piece born from errors and mistakes that turned into a multi-million-dollar phenomenon. And if you take a closer look at the year itself, 1989 was not known for extraordinary rarity in quarters, as billions were minted, but that only makes the appearance of a spectacular error all the more dramatic, because out of the billions, only one came out so flawed yet so perfect for collectors. And if you think about how many coins pass through our hands in a lifetime, the idea that one of them could be worth more than a mansion, more than a yacht, more than even some priceless works of art, is truly mind-boggling. And this is why the story of the 1989 quarter dollar valued at $13 million captivates audiences worldwide, because it challenges our sense of value. It makes us wonder what could be hiding in our pockets or piggy banks. And it reminds us that sometimes the smallest things can carry the greatest worth. And let's not forget the role of grading in determining this value, because condition matters tremendously in the world of coin collecting. And if the 1989 quarter with its extraordinary errors survived in pristine condition, perhaps graded MS67, MS68, or even higher by a reputable grading service like PCGS or NGC, then its rarity combined with its eye appeal would make it virtually priceless. And this is often how such astronomical figures are reached, a perfect storm of rarity, condition, and collector demand. And beyond the technical errors, there is also the narrative of human imperfection, the idea that even in the most industrialized, mechanized processes, mistakes slip through, and those mistakes become treasures. And when you trace back through history, you will find that many of the most valuable coins ever sold were error coins, like the 1955 double-die Lincoln cent, the 1937 D three-legged Buffalo nickel, or the 2000 Sacagawea dollar mule with a state quarter reverse. Each of these coins commands huge premiums because they tell the same story of mistakes turned into treasures, and the 1989 quarter fits right into that tradition, standing out as one of the crown jewels. And while some skeptics might ask why a simple quarter could be worth $13 million, the answer lies in the dynamics of rarity, error significance, condition, and the competition among collectors, all of which merge together to create a perfect recipe for astronomical value. And the possibilities that make it valuable are not limited to one type of error, because in reality the coin could represent a hybrid of mistakes, a multiple strike on a misaligned planchet with doubling and a rotated die, creating a visual spectacle that is undeniable in its rarity. And while most of us will never see such a coin in person, the story itself inspires collectors and treasure hunters to keep looking, to keep checking their change, because who knows? The next multi-million-dollar rarity might be sitting in a jar of coins somewhere right now, waiting to be discovered. And that possibility is what fuels the hobby, the dream of turning a common quarter into life-changing wealth. And this is why the 1989 quarter dollar with its $13 million valuation continues to be one of the most talked about rarities in numismatic circles, a symbol of how errors and mistakes can create beauty and value beyond imagination. So if you enjoyed learning about this remarkable coin and the fascinating world of errors and rarities, stay tuned for more incredible stories from the hidden world of numismatics, where history, chance, and human imperfection collide to create treasures that are worth far more than their weight in metal.